Hey guys, Eric here. I'm solo this time to do my review of Eternals, aka MCU Part 26. Although, if you consider the fact that they've had 4 TV shows now, it's really Part 30. There's a lot of MCU. I think a lot of you kind of know the gist of this one because it is the MCU. It's directed by Chloe Zhao, which is clearly a big deal going in because we've never had an Academy Award winner directing one of these films. Very fresh off of her Academy Award winning film. She also co-wrote the screenplay. It's a large ensemble cast, and the core element here is the Eternals are this ancient group of beings. They have been among us for thousands of years. They've been here on Earth with a very specific purpose, which is to stop their enemies, the deviants. And with that goal seemingly accomplished, they had gone their separate ways for a few hundred years. But suddenly things start to resurface. Seems like the deviants might be back, and they start reassembling, as it were, a core group comprised of Cersei, played by Gemma Chan, Icarus, played by Richard Madden, and Sprite, played by Leah McHugh. They get together and start going around the globe to find their old companions and also discover what is actually going on here. How are the deviants back? What else is occurring behind the scenes here? Eternals is an interesting one. Look, I am all in on Marvel. I've been reading Marvel comics since I was a little kid, and the MCU, which I love, I think is an amazing accomplishment. But I went in kind of wary on this one. I will say the trailers for this one weren't doing it for me. There just seemed to be something lacking. And I think this was maybe the least hyped I'd gone into an MCU movie. I don't know if I'd say ever, but certainly in quite a while. That being said, I quite enjoyed Eternals. I think that it accomplished a lot. It's trying to accomplish a lot. One of the things I was worried about, besides the fact that the trailers kind of seemed ho-hum, is there are 10 central Eternal characters being introduced in this movie all at once. That is a lot of characters to introduce and to make us invested in. Think about Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think previously was probably the time they introduced the most core characters at once, and that was 5. They're doubling of that here. And then there's supporting characters, one of whom is Dane Whitman, played by Kit Harington, who, anything you know about the comics or have Googled, is an important character in his own right. There's a lot they're doing here, but I think they pull it off. I think that we do get to know these characters. Of course, some of them have a lot more screen time than others. But by the end of this movie, I didn't feel sort of uncertain about anyone's role on the team or anyone's sort of core personality traits. I got a good feeling and a good vibe about all of them. And I think that's really impressive. There are things here that do set it apart from other MCU movies. I think that visually it is a very lovely movie. That's something that a lot of people going in were wondering with Chloe Zhao. I don't think it's jaw-droppingly so, like, something I've never seen, but I think there's a lot of lovely images in this movie, lovely landscapes, which you might expect from her. And also the fact that it kind of has a distinct feel to it, a lot of you are there moments with these bigger than life characters that feel kind of like, yes, they are truly like living amongst us. And some of it's in the flashback, some of it's in the modern day. There are also multiple moments, I think, in this movie that feel like they're rebuffing specific criticism the MCU has gotten. A couple of those are about the depiction of romance. One of those is the introduction of Phastos. This is the character played by Brian Tyree Henry. As it's already known, he has a husband in the film, and this is not done in a coy way. It's nice to see this front and center. There's also been, I think, a lot of people have talked in the past about the fact that no one in the MCU ever seems to be having sex. I think that's been overplayed a bit. Remember how we met Tony Stark, everyone? But I do think this movie definitely remedies that as well. It just feels like this movie is saying, hey, guess what? Don't worry. We've been listening, and we can show more than we've been showing in the past as far as like these people feeling very fully realized and like they live full lives. I don't want to go over the top here and say this movie has crazy twists or anything, which it does not. But I also think that it takes some nice beats, or I didn't expect it to. It goes a little bit off the path that I think would be the predictable one. I think it makes some interesting decisions with some of the characters that weren't exactly traditional, and I respected that about it. And amongst this very large cast, there were a couple of highlights to me. Everyone's good, but I think Kumail Nanjiani is getting so much attention for how buff he got. But remember, folks, he's a very funny, charming guy. And so is his character, Kingo. And I really liked Leah McHugh as Sprite. This is an interesting character. She is, a little girl who's one of the Eternals. And they really deal with sort of the tragic side of this. It's a very similar, I was talking to some friends about this, and then I talked to Chloe Zhao, who said this was something she had in mind too, of Kirsten Dunst in Interview with the Vampire. The idea that if you were trapped as a kid forever, there'd be something very sad about that. and how everyone perceives you and how you're stuck and how you can't really live a full life. And I think that is done really well, and her performance is really good. Also, I like the fact that Salma Hayek and Angelina Jolie, who are clearly the biggest stars of this cast, play part of the ensemble. I mean, Salma Hayek has an important role as Ajak, who's the leader of the team, and Angelina Jolie as Thena is, a strong warrior who has her own subplot, but they're part of the ensemble. Neither of them are kind of like put in the spot, like, look at the huge star, and actually both admire that on the filmmaking side, and even just casting wise, the fact that Angelina Jolie's like, yeah, I'll just be part of the team. That's totally fine. Dislikes, there are some things that drag this movie down a little bit, and there's a reason I'm a little bit guarded about it. They don't do any sort of recruiting montage, which on one side is a plus. You're getting to the characters better, but I think pacing wise, this movie can lag, especially in the first half, because they're going around and they're, meeting up with their old friends, and we spend quite a bit of time doing that. Sometimes we spend a long time with one particular character as we get to know them, and these guys get to know them again. And again, it's to the movie's benefit in some respects, but also there's no denying that pacing wise, sometimes you're kind of like, okay, maybe we need to speed up here a little bit. There's a reason montages are employed sometimes. And I don't know if that was the case that they should have done that here, but I felt like, it does feel a little bit slow at the beginning. And on the action side, I did think it was a little bit lacking. There's a couple of cool moments, but there's nothing too memorable here. Some of the Eternals have some pretty cool powers. Some have powers that seem a little ho-hum. But there's sometimes I felt like they could have done a little more with what these people have the ability to do. Also, I want to say that I really like Gemma Chan, and I think she does good work as Cersei. But Cersei is the central character here. She's basically the POV character from the start. And I felt that they needed to do a little more with her. I mean, her big trait is that she kind of cares about humanity the most of all the Eternals. She's really kind of invested in them, and maybe more than she should have, to some degree, at least as far as she's been told, but she can't help that. But I just felt there was like, I felt a little detached from the character that I think you're supposed to be the most invested in. And it was fine as is, but it was something where I felt like they could have gone a little deeper with. Also, this came up so much as a fan question. We saw in the trailers, they do address, why the hell did they not interfere this whole time? First and foremost with Thanos, Infinity War, but also all of history. They've been here for thousands of years. That means World War II happened on their watch, and a lot of other terrible things. It is addressed. I don't know how satisfying it is, because no matter what they were told or what they thought was right, it kind of feels like a dick move to sit out some of those things that they set out. I did like how one of the Eternals does kind of address that directly. I thought that was kind of a cool aspect, but at the same time, I felt like, I don't know if I completely buy into these characters who seem very likable and on the, for the most part, that they would have sat out for this long, but kind of have to go with it because that's where we are. Overall, I really like this movie. Like I said, it has a lot of lovely moments throughout. It's not great. And I saw when I saw this movie and I put my reaction out on Twitter along with other people, which was after the premiere, I saw a lot of people kind of analyzing that. I understand why, saying, oh, people seem guarded, so I bet it's not that great. I'm like, well, because maybe it's not great. Maybe it's quote unquote just good, or I'd say really good. And that's okay. I think, all these movies aren't going to land in the amazing, awesome category, or, oh, they just completely, failed and it didn't work at all. This is, I think, ultimately probably a middle ground MCU movie. There are a lot ones that are a lot more better, but there are a lot more that I thought this one was superior to. It did a very good job of world building. It stands on its own for the most part. It exists in the MCU. They name drop Thanos and a couple other characters, but it doesn't really lean onto that too heavily. And I thought it did a very good job of establishing so much in this one movie. At the same time, I don't think it lives up to all the potential they could have done here, but it made me legitimately excited to see what's next for these characters. And again, going in, I kind of was worried about that. I thought, oh, am I just going to be completely detached? But no, I did care about them. I did get invested in them, and I thought that was to his credit. So good, not great. So if that's okay with you, and I hope it is, because a lot of movies are good, I think you should check out Eternals. But you probably are, right? Because it's the MCU. I would give it 3.5 out of 5. That is my rating for the film. But I am certainly curious what everyone will think as they see it. We'll, of course, be talking more. I'm sure we're going to do a spoiler chat after it debuts. So look for plenty more there, and keep it here at Fandom, guys. Thanks.